could you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about who you are and your artwork?
Sure. My name is Dan Zeller. I have been making art probably my whole life. I have always drawn. So as a kid, I was always drawing in my notebooks and doodling and that kind of thing. And in college, I studied sculpture. I got a BFA from University of Connecticut and an MFA from University of Massachusetts, both in sculpture. And I also continued drawing throughout that time. I never thought of drawing as something that was, a career or something I would focus on. I was very interested in building things and making things. Moving to New York, space became an issue and storage and all that stuff. So I kind of, for that reason, migrated more towards drawing for those reasons. I was able to work for a couple hours after a job, so it was easier to kind of generate ideas and keep things going quickly. So anyway, the drawings I do are sort of labor intensive and very methodical, related to a lot of maps and satellite imagery that I look at, microscopic imagery, all kinds of scientific images, schematic diagrams, you name it, it's kind of in the mix of where my sources come from. I've just always had a really broad interest in kind of everything. So in order to sort of focus on one thing, I don't. I kind of pull it all together and build these. I think of them either as environments, like an aerial view of a landscape or of a very small, like microscape. There's sort of a interplay between those two ideas. So I'm really inventing, using the languages of those sources, and inventing my own kind of world in a way, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you talked about world creating, because some of your works that I was looking at kind of reminded me, like the map pieces that you're talking about reminded me of sci-fi books and like fantasy when you open those up and see those, and it kind of has that otherworldly thing where it's based in our world, but yeah, you kind of make it your own or see it through a different lens.
Right, yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your process, about the tools you work with, and kind of how long it takes you to make these bit pieces.
Yeah, I work on various scales. I work pretty large sometimes. I usually have a couple of pretty large pieces working and a whole stack of smaller ones kind of going, and I'll kind of pick through and work on whichever one kind of fits my mood or the one I'm kind of focused on at that time. Or if I'm stuck with something, I'll put it away for a while and go back to something else. But I work on paper almost exclusively. I do some work with pencil, with graphite, and mostly now I'm working with ink, and I work with technical pens that are the devices that architects and draftspeople used to use before computers took over. So they're these kind of, if you're not familiar with them, they're very temperamental, that you have to maintain them very carefully. They have a pretty sharp needle kind of point, and you have to be very gentle with how you work with them on the page. But I'm able to make very clean, kind of consistent lines with them, and then I have other, they come in different sizes, so I use kind of a broader nib in filling in color. So generally, when there's color, I'm making an outline and then filling it in.
Thank you for that. And I was wondering if you have any projects you're currently doing that you're really excited about that you wanted to talk about.
Can't say that I do. You talk about my process. It's very consistent. You know, I work on a number of drawings, and they're just always going. The ideas and the vocabulary I use evolves very slowly, and there's a lot of interplay between the drawings. So something I discover in one drawing, I might bring to the next drawing. they tend to work almost in series. If you were to see my whole body of work, you'd see certain kinds of drawings that are similar and change over time. You could probably put those into lanes and watch them develop kind of separate from other lanes. But again, there's a lot of crossover there. I'm not really working on a specific project. It's more like I'm always just working. It's almost like I'm working on one drawing over and over and over. I do have, I've started to use imagery in some of the works where I'm projecting usually satellite imagery of specific places, and I'll do a tracing and then I'll work into that, using it almost like a skeleton. So that can be considered a bit of a separate body where there's actual specific locations embedded in the work.
So our sort of topic today is imposter syndrome, sort of that idea of sort of that anxiety of feeling like maybe you don't deserve where you've gotten, or maybe you feel like a fraud sometimes, or you feel like, people are going to find out that I'm not as awesome as, where I am. I was curious if you have advice on that or thoughts on that, or your
I've met very few artists who don't experience that. I mean, my feeling in general with artists is we're coming from a place that's, I don't want to say separate from the culture at large, but we tend to feel a little bit like outsiders. I think artists aren't valued enough in our culture, in our broader culture. So, we think of ourselves as kind of looking at the culture from the outside a little bit. Not always, of course, and that's another level of imposter syndrome. Am I really on the outside or am I on the inside? Who knows? Because there's that kind of cliche about an artist too, that they're the outsider who's kind of so. I feel
like,
that all.
Am I outside enough?
Right. Or yeah, exactly. Or am I really outside? Am I inside where I should be outside? could go either way. I think it's it's self-doubt that every human being has about just living in the world and being in this chaotic universe that we're in. So yeah, I feel that almost all the time. I'm also doing something that, if you look at it from a certain angle, it's completely useless. I'm making lines on paper all day long. I enjoy it. I get satisfaction from it. I meet a lot of people that also respond to it, and they appreciate it. So there's something there, but at another point, it's just lines on paper. It's not really serving any purpose whatsoever. So there's that aspect of it, as well as the broader, is what I'm doing valuable within the small art community itself, or within the creative community. I just put my nose to the grindstone and keep working because I enjoy it, and I try to also have a context for it in thinking of it the way I kind of just described it. A lot of what I see out in the world is also pretty useless, so I don't feel if that makes sense. Really, what I'm trying to say is if you're not making food or shelter, it's kind of extra. It's stuff that is optional. It's not really.
Yeah.
Culture is important. We need it. We need the arts, of course. Where would we be without it? But in terms of survival of the species, it's like, if it's not food or shelter, something else.
Right. So what I'm hearing is kind of like, if you contextualize it or kind of even reframe it, the purpose isn't as big of a deal.
It's there are two sides to the coin, like everything else. I feel like in order to progress as a species through time, we really need this. We need culture. We need to explore everything that we're doing, and but day to day, it's like survival. We don't need it, so it's necessary and unnecessary at the same time. I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel like it's it's key. It's keeping me sane in a way.
And you said you enjoy it, and you have this thing inside of you that pushes you, and you've always been doing it. And I think, does there need to be more? No.
Right.
That's how I feel. I really like that idea, or just that perspective of the fact that we all question what we're doing every now and then. And I think especially artists, I'm a writer, and I think most artists feel like this, where it's a very personal thing. And some days you just hate what maybe you don't.
Right.
Some days I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever written.
Yeah, no, I feel that way.
I'm a genius,
Right.
And I feel like there's a lot of pendulum swinging with the artist.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky in that I have a very consistent practice. I can sit down and work for 10 minutes, and if I get interrupted, I come back to it. Like if I get a full day in the studio, it's great. But I'm always kind of coming back to where I left off. A lot of people don't work that way. They need to kind of finish a thing or an idea that they're working on. So I think it makes it a little tougher for other people, at certain points in their life when they're not able to be in the studio or writing or whatever it is. I think that's when you really start to question it. It's like, I can't do the thing I really want to do. Is it really worth this struggle and this kind of pain I'm putting myself through? Yeah,
exactly. And just finding that work-life balance.
Yeah.
Art-life balance.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really tricky. Yeah. I mean, for a long time I was working jobs and jobs I didn't like. I still occasionally have to, but for the most part, I've been doing okay with the work. But yeah, it's a struggle to have the energy to do it. If you work all day at a job, you come home, do you really want to spend another, all those hours in the studio when there's no guarantee of a reward at the end of it, other than just being able to do it.
I totally agree. And I think, working full time, even if it's not a high stress job, it's just, those are your hours,
Right.
You only have a certain amount of energy.
Yep.
So.
You only have a certain amount of life. You got to give it a number of years. It's like, you want to be spending it working for the man, working for some job that you don't really like. So, I was lucky to find work that was somewhat satisfying. So in thinking about imposter syndrome, I was thinking a lot that it was just like another form of insecurity. And I think we all have that. We all have insecurities and self-doubt. And I think for anybody in a creative field, I think that's actually a really important element to have. It's almost a tool. You're always assessing what you're doing and always looking at things from different angles. Am I doing this right? It's another way to look at it, all those things. And I think that's really constructive, actually. It sometimes feels like you're crashing and burning, but that allows you a different perspective and a way to really grow as an artist, I think. That's the way I've always done it. I'm kind of in my own head while I work, and half the time I'm thinking, this is crazy, what am I doing? And then the other half, I find that that's actually how I get to find new ways of working and new ways of looking at the work. So I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Awesome. Yeah, that does. That's like using it as a force for good.
Yeah, I think so.
Almost you're kind of like reframing it from something that, we talk about it as such a negative thing, but
exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Right. I think it's like your own analysis of it is very important. Yeah.